most of these large organizations are not detecting attacks for over 2 years. I mean, this is crazy. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome to this week's episode of Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole, where I spend time with you each week talking about the important skills and lessons learned of what you need to do to be the most effective CISO on the planet. And I tell you, when I put on my magic jacket, I know it's go time, right? Thor might have his magical hammer. Linus might have his special blanket, but I have my power jacket, right? So when the jacket comes on, it's time to go. And I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite times of the week to share with you what it means and how you could become the best Chief Information Security Officer in the world. And I always like starting with discussion and want to acknowledge all the great comments we're getting. We're getting a lot of good feedback. We're starting to get some traction. So I just ask two things: that if you enjoy this podcast, please tell others, please pass it on. And if there's questions or comments or other topics you'd like me to discuss, please post them and I'd be happy to address them. So the first thing I want to start off with is this concept of what is a CISO and what they're not. And what I find a lot is really smart, brilliant people that love being the problem solvers. They love being that go-to person that fixes every problem and that gets all of the attaboys that you're doing a great job. Those types of people make terrible CISOs. And the reason is this: a CISO needs to stay strategic and rely on their team. They need to have a team. Now, their team might be under IT. Their team might be virtual. But the bottom line is a CISO comes up with the strategy, identifies problems, and tells the players what to do. But a really good CISO doesn't go out on the field. If you watch any sports, you don't ever, even when the team is doing really bad, you don't ever see the coach go out on the field and start throwing the football or go out on the court and start shooting baskets, right? They don't do that. They have a team. They rely on a team. And if the plays aren't working, they need to adjust and adapt. But they're the ones that design and call the plays. They are never the ones that run the plays. And I see this a lot. I'm working with a CISO now, and every time I have my coaching calls with them, it's sort of the same thing. They're like, Eric, my team's getting frustrated and I'm not able to get the security things done and my bosses are getting upset. And the reason is simple. As soon as there's a problem or an issue, they roll up their sleeves and fix it. A perfect example was they started having issues with the remote workforce where they installed some new applications and they were being blocked by the firewall. So the wrong thing to do, which is what this CISO did, is they immediately logged into the firewall, started testing, assessing, verifying, and validating. They figured out what the issue was. They wrote a new rule set. They tested, verified, validated the rule set, and they pushed it out. And within 20 minutes, the new application was working. And everyone was like, awesome job, awesome job, awesome job. That was the complete wrong thing to do. And here's why. Their team was left in the dark. Their team was confused. Their team was showed that they're not important. And nobody knew what was going on until after the fact. The correct thing for that CISO to have done is to immediately set up a meeting with their team and find out what is the problem. What is the problem or issue? And then come up with multiple solutions, pick the best solution, and then pick somebody on their team to go and run that play, to go and fix the solution. And then they would go and tell the executives what the problem was, what the solution is, and an estimated time to fix it. And then the correct thing for the CISO to do would be manage between the technical team. How is it going? Is the play working, or do we need a new play? And then letting the executives know the status and when the problem will be resolved. So it's an important shift for some people, and I'll be honest with you. Some people, I believe, just don't have the right wiring to be a chief information security officer. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'll be honest with you, probably in another week or two, this person that I'm coaching that I just gave you the example, I will probably have that hard conversation with them where I will basically fire my client, which I don't like to do, right? But I don't like taking money from somebody that I'm not helping, and just have the honest conversation going, listen, you need to be that unicorn. You are amazing. You can solve problems quicker and faster than most people, and you love that, and companies need that. I used to play soccer when I was growing up, and in soccer, you have the striker, and the striker is basically wherever the ball is. You go wherever the ball is or where the ball's going, and your goal is to always try to make the big plays, right? Try to take the ball away, try to make the big goals. You're that extra augmented player. You don't actually have a set position like everyone else, but you're just meant to always go and add some extra value and benefit. And companies need that person. Companies need that that tactical problem solver. But that's not a CISO. The CISO is a strategic position. So that's something that you have to understand, because I believe that really, really successful people are doing things they love. And you can be very successful at anything if you have a purpose and a passion to follow that. So if you're not passionate about strategy, if you're not passionate about letting other people run the plays, if you're not passionate about standing on the sidelines and overseeing, but not getting on the field, then that's okay. You can make a lot of money as a security engineer, as a security visionary, as a security evangelist, but I would recommend that being a chief information security officer is probably not the right job for you. And the other reason this came up was just not this experience that I had coaching one of my clients, but also one of the questions that came in. One of the questions that came in was, Eric, as a chief information security officer, how much should I know about pen testing? Should I go in and get my certification in pen testing? Should I know how to do pen testing? Should I perform pen testing and all those factors? And as I read that, all I kept thinking was fork in the road. Fork in the road, fork in the road. Here's what I mean. Many of you right now are at this position where the road ends and it divides. And you could go to the left and you can go to the right. What's important is you can't go straight. You can't continue on your current path. And to the left means you're going to move into chief information security officer, which, let's face it, is an executive or management position. It's a strategic position. Or you can go to the right and you can decide to be technical and be the best technical person on the planet. And I will tell you, you can make money doing both. I've done both. I've been very, very successful. I have friends of mine that are extremely, extremely successful going right on the technical path. And there are people that are very, very successful going left to the strategic path. But the point is, only you can decide what you want in the future and what your passion is and what you love to do. Now, be clear, this can change over time. But if you're a chief information security officer and you want to be successful and you want to have a successful team and work well with anyone in your environment, you cannot do both. And I know there's some of you, right? Because I've coached some of you. They're like, oh no, Eric, no, I'm going to be different. I can do both. I'll tell you right now, you cannot. And I could have you talk to many CISOs that didn't listen to me, and they learned the hard way, right? They thought they could do both, and they've tried to do both. And after 2 or 3 years of losing jobs and a lot of turnover and a lot of frustration, they realized you can only do one or the other. And I go back to my example. A coach doesn't run plays, and the person running the plays doesn't coach, right? It's one or the others. A CISO is the coach. The technical security engineer is the player on the field. So if you truly want to be a chief information security officer, and I think it's amazing, and I love strategy and I love looking big picture, the answer to your question about pen testing is, as a chief information security officer, you should understand at a high level what a pen test is. You should understand the value to your organization, and you should understand when and where to use it. So as a CISO, if I'm getting a pen test done, the main reason for performing it is I want visibility. I want to see what is the visibility and exposures to my organization. I essentially want to know three things. I want to know what IPs or what servers are visible from the internet. I want to know what ports or services are open on each of those systems. And really, most importantly, to be honest, I just want to know what the vulnerabilities are and a prioritized list of them. So as long as I know that whoever I'm hiring a pen test is going to give me a complete visibility map of the network, they're going to be able to go in and comprehensively look at my entire organization and give me a prioritized list of external vulnerabilities to my organization, then essentially I'm happy. I don't need to know the methodology. I don't need to know the details. I don't need to know the specifics. If you're a chief information security officer, you just have to make sure it's a good, sound strategy and you're very clear on the output that you're getting and you're receiving. Now, I just want to give a little twist on this. And I know some people get mad at me when I say this, and some people get really, really angry and frustrated because this is how they make their business. But to me, cybersecurity is all about evolving. One of the big areas of focus is we want to make it harder for the adversary. Why are we making it so easy for the adversary to break into our network? Why are we going in, and if we have 5 servers visible from the internet, letting them find 5 servers? And if there's 3 ports open on each, letting them find that. That's way too easy. So I'm a very big fan when we're designing and building out a network architecture to do what we call offensive countermeasures, or things to try to make it harder for the adversary, which is also sometimes called deception or decoys. So the idea is this: I'm going to put out on my network 5 legitimate servers that legitimate people know about and access. And then I'm going to also put 50 decoys on there. So now when you go in and you do a discovery of my network and you do an IP sweep, you're going to see 55 servers. 5 are legitimate, 50 are not. So now we're sort of playing the Where's Waldo. We're making it much, much harder for the adversary. And the same thing with ports and services and others. Now, some of you might say, so you're putting up honeypots? No, this is sort of like honeypots on steroids plus. A honeypot is really more of you put up 1 or 2 servers with the idea of understanding how the adversary works and operates. It's more of a forensic discovery tool. What we're talking about here with decoy and deception is making it harder for them to break in. And this is one that took me a while. When I started setting up and with CISO work and a lot of the work we do for our clients at Secure Anchor, we do a lot of network architecture design, carefully designing the traffic flows, where servers reside, and how the information is visible on the network. And I always thought when we were setting up decoys and deception and offensive countermeasures that it was really about slowing down the adversary, slowing him down, making it harder, making it take longer, and making it a much more difficult process. And while that is partially true, what I realized in watching these in real life, the real value with decoys and deception is early detection. If I only have 5 servers on the network, I'm not doing offensive countermeasures, and legitimate users are connecting to my system and attackers are connecting to my system, I really can't tell the difference. It's really difficult to know which is which. And that's why, because most companies are focused mainly on prevention and not enough on detection, they miss attacks. But if I now have 50 decoys and 5 legitimate, I don't care how good you are. If you're going in and you're trying to break into my network, you are going to inadvertently hit one of those decoys. It's got to happen. Now, you might be clever and you might find the 5 servers, but then when we get to our ports and our services and our account, I mean, at some level, you're going to trip on one of those. And now, if I see anybody connect to any of those decoys, what do I instantly and immediately know? It's unauthorized, and it's potentially an attacker. So now I have an early detection system. So now I can go in, and if I see an IP address that's connecting to one of my legitimate servers, and all of a sudden it connects to one of the not legitimate, or it connects to one of my decoy ports or decoy accounts, I immediately know something is going on. There's unauthorized traffic, and I have to immediately research it. So it also gives me a really nice early detection mechanism. So that is more the role of a CISO, is understanding how to strategically design the network. Now, where I'm going, and the reason why I said a lot of people don't like when I say this, if I'm going in and I'm putting up this very robust architecture with a lot of decoys and a lot of deception and making it much harder so I have this early detection, you're making it much more difficult for the adversary, and you're able to detect the adversary in a quicker, faster manner. Well, what does that mean for a pen tester? Remember, pen testers are just like attackers, except they're doing it for positive, not negative, right? They're doing it for visibility and to improve security, not to cause harm to your network. Well, if I'm putting all this effort and energy in place, I'm now going in and slowing down the pen tester. I'm making it more difficult. I'm making it a lot harder. So now, instead of spending 30 hours doing a pen test, you have to spend 90. And now, instead of having a true comprehensive view of the network, you're getting a partial or potentially incorrect view of the network. So in my opinion, if the goal of pen testing is to find out external vulnerabilities and to find exposure points that should be fixed, isn't that quicker, faster, and easier to do that as part of an internal assessment? Now, somebody's coming in, you're giving them full access, so they know the decoys and deceptions are there. They know the 5 legitimate servers. They know the actual ports and patch levels. And now they can go in and more quickly identify all the exposure points. And now they can prioritize those risks internally and externally together. And in my opinion, a comprehensive security assessment or risk assessment that's both external and internal gives you a better visibility, a better risk matrix, and a better security roadmap, so you know where to go and what to fix in your environment. So once again, that's just something to think about. I know a lot of companies like the pen test, and they think it's cool. And a lot of security professionals like being pen testers, right? Or ethical hackers, right? Because it sounds super cool. But ultimately, as a CISO, you have to step back and say, what's best for the organization? What's best and what's going to give me the most visibility of what's happening within that environment. Now, I'll give you another great example of the role of a CISO. The role of a CISO is to understand problems and issues in the environment and put together effective strategies for minimizing and reducing that. Now, yes, you should include your team. You should include other core folks in the organization, but you constantly need to look at the organization and say, okay, what's one of the biggest risks or exposures that we currently have, and how do we fix it and how do we address it? And I'll give you a great example. And this is one when I've been virtual CISO and I train my virtual CISOs to help organizations with this. If we really step back, most, not all, because every organization is different, but if we look at most organizations today from a cybersecurity perspective, what is the fundamental biggest problem or biggest risk to the organization? And I would say it's not detecting attacks in a timely manner. It's not able to catch attacks, and therefore organizations are compromised on average for 2 to 3 years before they detect it. Just think about that for a second. Think about that, right? With all the money and all the effort and all the people in place, most of these large organizations are not detecting attacks for over 2 years. I mean, this is crazy. So now, if your organization is compromised for over 2 years, attacker can slowly exfiltrate data, and that's what leads to a significant major breach in your organization. To me, the number one problem is timely detection. And the reason is simple. Cybersecurity is not about stopping all attacks. It's impossible. Listen to my previous podcasts where we talk about prevention and detection, right? Prevention is ideal, detection is a must. You cannot prevent all attacks. You are going to get compromised. If your organization is making any money, if you're in business, anything like that, you are going to get compromised. So the goal of cybersecurity is timely detection and minimizing the damage. That's the name of the game. So it's all about the detection piece. So let's drill down a little more. So if we say the number one problem for most organizations is they are compromised for way too long, or they're not able to detect attacks in a timely manner. Why? Remember, a good CISO asks more questions. A good CISO doesn't go in and give the answers. That's why they have a team. They ask the right questions. One of my favorite phrases, I wish I could flip my camera around. It's one of the posters I have on my wall. And it states, smart people know the right answers. Brilliant people ask the right questions. So you have to ask why. Why is it that our organization, or most organizations, aren't detecting attacks in a timely manner? And the reason is simple. We allow outbound SSL TLS, secure socket layer, transport layer security. We allow people to surf the web, and today almost all websites and all browsers require encrypted communication. So we're allowing encrypted communication out of the network. And by nature of encrypted communication, that means we can't read it, right? We don't have the keys. We can't read it. That's the whole idea, right? That's one of the big problems is most people go in and incorrectly state that encryption stops the adversary from reading our traffic. It protects our critical information. That's only partially correct. Encryption stops anybody from reading anybody's traffic. So yes, it does stop the attacker from reading our communication, but it also stops us from reading or accessing the attacker's communication. So watch what happens. If we say we're going to allow all outbound communication on, say, SSL, TLS, TCP port 443 out of the organization, what do you think a clever attacker is going to do? When they break in to your organization, they're going to set up outbound encrypted communication so it looks just like legitimate communication. So now our perimeter defense is like, okay, anyone going outbound to websites encrypted is good, and the adversary flies right under the radar. They fly under the radar, and we completely miss their communication. Now, yes, some entities and there's some technology out there have proposed, why don't we go in and decrypt all the communication leaving the organization? Why don't we decrypt it so we can examine it? Here's the problem with that approach. First, it's very, very time consuming to do. Second, if you now have a device on the perimeter that has all your keys so you can decrypt all the traffic, that's an exposure point. Right? So you're creating a new exposure where if an adversary gets access to that, they have all of your crypto keys. And the third reason is most organizations today do allow some personal communication. So if you're now going in and letting people surf the web or use e-commerce or set up appointments with their doctors or things like that, you're now technically decrypting and accessing their information, and you could be in violation potentially of some of those regulations like PCI, PHI, PII, and many of those others that are out there. So you want to make sure you're super careful with that. But it's really not a great scalable solution. So as a chief security officer, you want to step back and design a strategy. So here's two. One, my recommendation, if you're a chief information security officer, any new technology that you put in place, any new security technology, any replacement of security technology, you must answer one simple question. Can this technology analyze and detect attacks in encrypted traffic? Because the number one problem we have today is all of this technology is out. I mean, you hear all this stuff about artificial intelligence and behavioral analytics and all this great, amazing stuff that's out there. But there's one problem. And the problem is this. It requires payload analysis in order to work. So if I can read the payload and analyze the payload, I got you. Mr. or Mrs. Attacker, you're done. I got you. I'm going to detect you. Here's the problem. If they're using encryption to fly under the radar and all the payload is now encrypted and you're buying technology that requires payload analysis to work and the technology can't analyze the payload, do we see the problem? Right? It's ineffective. And I see these companies are spending $300,000-$400,000 on this amazing behavioral analytics and it ain't working. Right? It's not working because all the traffic is encrypted. So another solution that I just want to show you, sort of the idea of being creative. I also want to give you something, if you are a chief information security officer, you can take back to your organization and just show you, once again, to answer that question of strategy versus tactics. So another solution that we do is we design crypto-free zones. So the idea is this. On your local area network, the adversaries are betting on the fact that all your traffic is encrypted. So if they encrypt, they blend in, you can't detect them, and they fly under the radar. But one of my strategies as a CISO is I always say, I ask this question: how can we turn the adversary's greatest strength into the biggest weakness? Their greatest strength is they're encrypting and blending in. So what if now the local area network, I call it the last mile, is unencrypted? So we take high risk individuals that are known to cause problems, get infected, click on links, and we put them on a crypto-free zone. Now we can still have upstream encryption, right? They can still proxy, so upstream encryption. They can still encrypt going out on the internet, and we can still firewall, but the local area network is now crypto-free. Now watch what happens. If all of the local traffic going to the upstream switch or router is unencrypted and then it gets encrypted, that means that if an adversary breaks into a system and sets up an encrypted channel, we have just turned their greatest strength into their biggest weakness, because now they stick out. So now we can put crypto detectors on our local network, and as soon as we see any encrypted traffic, it's binary. We don't have to analyze it. We don't have to look at it. If we see any encrypted traffic, we set off an alert and we know we have a problem. We know that we have unauthorized and or potentially malicious traffic on our network, and we can respond very, very quickly. And I'll tell you, we have put this in clients where they have had problems. They've had individuals that get infected and they haven't detected it for 2 to 3 years. Now, with this solution where it's crypto-free, now when they get infected and the adversary attempts to make an encrypted connection out of the network, we catch them in 2 seconds instead of 2 years. So that's the strategy. Now, you would come up with that strategy based on conversations with your staff, and then they would implement it. So as a chief information security officer, you would decide that for anybody that has got infected multiple times with malware or is high risk individuals, we're going to put them on a crypto-free zone, and we're going to put crypto detectors. And whenever we see encrypted traffic, we're going to have our security operations center respond immediately. That's the play. You've created the play. Now, as a chief information security officer, you don't implement it. So you would sit with IT, and IT or the engineers or the security engineers, depending on your organization is set up, they would go and implement it. They would set it up. They would test it. They would validate it. And then all you would want to see are the test results, and you would want to see the weekly metrics. So now that I designed the play, I now want to go in and I want to see how many attacks we detect a week, a month using this play, and how much this play costs us in terms of resources. That's the CISO. Other engineers and technical people implement it. So back to where I started. Some of you might be at that fork in the road. Do I go right or do I go left? And here's how you think about it. If in listening to that example, you say, wow, implementing that solution would be super cool. I'd love to go in and set up those devices to detect the crypto. I'd love to redesign the VLANs. That really excites me. You probably don't want to be a CISO. You probably want to be an Uber security engineer. You want to go to the right, and you want to know as much as you can and be the best engineer. And I will tell you, companies will pay you significant amount and you will be invaluable. However, if you listened to that example and you were like, that is the coolest design. I wish I came up with that design. That's so awesome. I'm going to ask better questions. I would love to find out. And I love coming up with that high-level strategy. You are a CISO in the making, because that's really the difference. If you want to be a chief information security officer, your strategy, you're the coach on the sidelines. If you want to be a security engineer, you're going to be tactical and on the field. And trust me on this one, you cannot do both. If you want to be successful, you cannot do both. If you want to be the best in the world, you cannot do both. You can either ignore me and learn the hard lessons over a few years, or you can trust me on that. You need to pick one or the other, but you can't do both. And all I can say is, while I think being a CISO is one of the most exciting, rewarding careers on the planet, and I urge you to consider it, I want you to be happy. I want you to live with passion. So I will leave you with choose wisely. I hope you enjoyed this session of Life of a CISO. We're running our Great vCISO course. I'd love you to be a part of that. So if you go to secure-anchor.com, you can sign up. If you'd like to find out more information, you can either email us, info@secure-anchor.com. You can email me, ecole, ECOLE at secure-anchor.com, or you can leave a comment. We do monitor the comments. I also monitor and I reply directly to them. So we'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, join me on my mission to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family.